Imagine that you wake before sunrise, and someone beside the fire has stopped breathing. You touch his shoulder, waiting for warmth, but his body has become frighteningly still. Yesterday, he laughed with you, shared meat, and watched sparks climb into the darkness. Now his place near the fire is empty, and nobody knows what to say. Today, death hides behind hospitals, paperwork, soft voices, and doors we rarely open ourselves.
But in the ancient world, death sat openly beside every meal, every sleep, every breath. There were no doctors, no explanations, no gentle words to make loss feel understandable. There was only a body that once answered, and now returned nothing at all. And here, everything becomes frightening, because the question slowly enters your own mind forever. If he can vanish like this, can the same darkness also come for me? That question was not just sadness, and it was not just ordinary fear anymore. It was the moment humans began seeing tomorrow as something that could suddenly disappear. Before that, danger was simple. Teeth, hunger, cold, enemies, sickness, falling stones nearby at night. You ran, fought, hid, healed, or waited until the threat finally passed away again. But death was different, because death could not be chased away or negotiated with. It stayed after the danger ended, leaving silence where a living person had been. But the strangest part begins later, when the living refuse to simply leave him behind. They gather around the body, confused by the face that no longer responds back. Someone cries, someone stares, and someone keeps expecting the eyes to open again somehow. The group needs to move, but grief holds their feet against the hard earth. Every ancient day punished delay, because predators, weather, and hunger never showed mercy to anyone. Still, one person bends down and brushes dirt from the dead man's hand gently. That small gesture changes everything, because the body is no longer treated like waste. It is treated like someone who still matters, even without breath or movement anymore. Now imagine the worst possible moment. Night falls before the group can decide anything. Beyond the firelight, animal eyes appear between trees, reflecting hunger and patient darkness nearby. The dead cannot run, and the living know they may be next before sunrise. So they cover him with earth, not because it solves anything practical for survival. They place a tool beside him, something his hand once understood completely in life. A piece of food, a stone, a bone, a memory made visible for everyone. No animal does this with such heavy silence, such strange hope, such pain inside. But this is only half the story, because ritual begins where certainty completely ends. Maybe the dead person is gone, or maybe something invisible still remains nearby watching. Maybe the voice is hidden somewhere beyond the dark edge of the firelight tonight. Maybe death is not a wall, but a doorway nobody returns from alive again. These thoughts are terrifying, but they also make humans different from everything else living. Because once you imagine death, you begin imagining what might survive after it somehow. Names become important, because a name can bring someone back for a moment again. Stories become important, because a story can carry the dead into tomorrow's firelight again. Memory becomes important, because without memory, a person disappears a second time forever completely. And this changed everything, not in one day, but through countless ancient nights together. A child asks why the strongest hunter is lying beneath stones and soil now. No one has perfect answers, but the elders begin speaking carefully around the fire. They tell where he fell, what he feared, what mistake should never return again. Suddenly, death becomes a lesson, not only a wound inside the group's heart anymore. The dead man's ending teaches the living how to avoid the same darkness tomorrow. From grief comes warning. From warning comes memory. From memory comes culture itself slowly. But then comes the part almost nobody talks about. Death taught humans time itself. You start noticing that children grow, adults weaken, and elders slowly fade away from sight. You realize strength is temporary, and every body is secretly moving towards silence someday. This is not modern philosophy. For ancient people, it was raw survival every day. If elders die before speaking, the map of survival dies with them completely too. So children listen harder, because forgotten knowledge can become a grave tomorrow morning too. They memorize water places, dangerous plants, animal tracks, seasons, storms, and old mistakes carefully. Every lesson becomes a rope thrown across the darkness toward future people waiting ahead. Here is the real climax of the story. Death created the future itself inside us. Not because humans wanted to suffer, but because they wanted something to continue after them. That is why hands appear on cave walls, pressed like voices into stone forever. That is why graves become places the living return to again and again in silence. That is why stories outlive bodies, and why ancestors begin watching from memory forever. But the strangest part begins later, because this ancient fear still controls us today. You think you live far from that fire, surrounded by screens and medicine today. But your brain still carries the night when one body did not wake again. That is why you save photographs, messages, birthdays, names, videos, and small objects everywhere. You are building tiny shelters against the terror of being completely forgotten one day. Modern life hides death, but it cannot remove the ancient question inside us completely. Will anything remain when my body becomes quiet, cold, and unreachable forever someday afterward? And here, everything becomes frightening, because this fear shapes almost every human dream today. We build houses, families, monuments, books, careers, and profiles against disappearance every single day. We call it ambition, but sometimes it is just memory begging to survive longer. Now return to the first human standing above a shallow grave at dawn alone. He holds a small stone, not knowing science, heaven, biology, or consciousness yet at all. He only knows someone was here, and now the world feels broken forever inside. So he leaves the stone, making a sign for whoever comes tomorrow morning after him. Not for the dead, who cannot see it, but for the living nearby tomorrow. The sign says without words, "This person mattered and must not vanish twice from memory." But this is only half the story, because the sign changes the maker too. The moment he marks another life, he begins thinking about his own ending too. He sees the tree, the child, the fire, and the morning differently now forever. Everything around him may outlive him, and suddenly the world feels enormous and strange. Death did not make humans weaker. It made love heavier and choices sharper forever. Because loving someone mortal means knowing loss will come and staying anyway beside them. Maybe we became human when we understood life ends, yet still searched for meaning. When the fire went out, memory remained, and that ancient fear became our voice.